G'day, it's Melissa from digitalscrapbookinghq.com and I'm here today for another in our series, the ABCs of PSE. Today's letter of the day is the letter M, M for marquee. So let's check out the marquee tool. I've got this little chick here to help me. The marquee tool is one of the selection tools and it's one of the most basic selection tools. It makes either a rectangle when you click and drag or an oval. So a selection tool allows you to do a lot of things. This marquee tool, for example, if I create a rectangle around Matthew, I can move it from within the selection and then I can use the new layer via copy to make a copy of this layer, or a new layer via cut to cut out the layer, and what's left behind is a hole filled with the background color. You could use the selection tool to crop an image. You just make your selection and go to a image menu and then click crop, which can also be known as trimming an image in previous versions. And then if you switch to your move tool, you can just click and drag the current selection. Now, of course, if you don't like how any of those actions have ended up, you can always click undo. You can alter your selection by using these options. For example, if I choose add to selection, I can add more rectangles. If I click subtract, I can subtract a rectangle. And then if I do intersect, it selects only the section that overlaps. Let me show you that again. So start off with an easy selection of his head. And then I go to intersect. It will only choose the section that overlaps. But generally, I use the add and subtract options. So if I start off with a selection and I didn't quite do that wide enough, I'll hold down my shift key to add, and then I will hold down my alt key to subtract. You can use the add and subtract selection without actually clicking the buttons, but the button you're currently using will be highlighted. As you can see, I'm holding down alt, it highlights that subtract button, and if I hold down shift, you can see to the add selection there. Now, this next section is about feathering. When you create a new layer from this selection, it's super crisp. But if I do a similar selection with a feathering a lot higher, the feathering makes them more transparent. And you can see that better with, say, a white background or a black background. It's made the edges transparent by selecting fewer pixels. So feathering is a fun look if you want to blend the edges of the selection and not have such a harsh line. Another option we have here is the aspect option. This is where we can choose a fixed ratio or a fixed size for our selection. So a fixed ratio could be, for example, 4:6. And as we drag our rectangle, you'll see that we're restricted to the proportion of 4:6. So the fixed ratio is good if you want certain proportions for your image. Say, for example, you're wanting to print it on a certain size. But if you want to get specific to sizes, fixed size is probably your best option. You just type in a number. You can type it in pixels, centimeters, whatever you like. We'll stick to 4:6. And then when you click, you're given that exact fixed size. Now you can see here our image is really large because 4:6 really just selects Matthew's face, and that's where using the proportions can sometimes work better. Now, of course, you can do the same thing with the elliptical marquee. You're dragging from the top left corner. If you drag that way, of course, if you drag up here, you have to imagine where your mouse cursor is. That's an intersection of the top and the side of our rectangle. So it can take a little bit of time to get used to it. But don't forget, if you've got the marquee tool selected, you can always just move and Control J or Command J on the Mac to jump the selection to a new layer. And you have the same options for feathering. So if we draw our new marquee, that new layer, you can see it's beautifully feathered with those options. And we have the same add, subtract, and intersect. We also have anti-aliasing, which is just Photoshop's way of making the edges smoother, so they're not all jumpy when you zoom in. So there's one tool we haven't looked at yet. That's the Refine Edge tool. I'm going to go back to Matthew's head and select it and say I want a more refined selection. I can click Refine Edge and zoom in and then draw around the edge to get Photoshop Elements to find the actual edges of his head rather than just the ellipse. So as I draw over the edge, it's adding its smarts to try to make a really refined selection. So here we've got a bit of the background here I might want to remove. So I'm going to use the erase tool and go over that. You can use a variety of different views to make it easier to see the selection you're creating. You can use matching ants, which are those little dotted lines. You can use the rubylith overlay on black, on white, on layers. Play around and see which one works best for your selection. And then when you're finished, just click OK and you'll be returned to your selection. We talked more about the Refine Edge tool in our quick selection episode, which was the letter A. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the marquee and the elliptical marquee tools in Photoshop Elements. Give me a like if you found this video helpful, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon if you want to be notified of new videos. Sign up to my email reminders using the link in the description, and you'll also be sent my printable shortcut cards for Photoshop Elements. If you'd like to learn more about Photoshop Elements or digital scrapbooking, head to digitalscrapbookinghq.com.